the completion of your homework and preparation for the proposal writing, here is the final checklist that you need to check whether the organization best fits for that certain particular project or not. So number one, conduct an internal assessment, that is SWOT. We discussed this earlier. What are your fundraising goals that you need to focus on? So, as I said earlier, your focus should be particularly on the goals, and do not get distracted to different other funders or different other projects that are available and where you don't have any competencies for that. Now, estimate what is the total cost of your project. So how much is the total cost? What are the timelines for your fundraising effort? How much time do you want to take to successfully raise funds for running certain project? You also need to identify the sources, and as I showed you a short list of different funders, but the funding organizations, this number reaches up to hundreds in different countries. And the final thing that you need to keep in mind is to evaluate your fundraising plan during the year. So every year you start making some different funding plans and evaluate it and adjust it and readjust it accordingly. Okay. Now, some journal writing tips before actually starting writing down the proposal. So if you want that your proposal becomes really strong, here are some of the tips that you need to keep in mind. Number one, most foundation boards prefer short, succinct proposal, to the point, clear of purpose, clear of goals, clear of focus. So I discussed this point earlier as well. So most organizations look for such kind of information that is to the point. So when you start writing down your proposal, that should also address this issue. So it should be to the point, succinct, and be clear about what you actually want to achieve from that project. If you don't have solid writing skills, I would suggest that you proofread, you ask for some help. And for this purpose, you can ask any colleague, any senior, or any friend of yours to do it for you. But don't take this point for granted. You need to revise, you need to make different corrections, and particularly strong writing skills are important. You also need to ensure that the key goals and the planned outcomes are clearly stated. Right? What are the goals that you want to achieve? That should be clearly incorporated there. So when we discuss the key elements that should be there on your proposal, I'll be discussing what are the key outcomes and what is the difference between different outcomes and outputs and impacts. So I'll be discussing this in detail later on, but for the moment, you need to understand that should be very clear and to the point. Now, the tone of your writing, that should be active. Avoid passive style of writing. So here, I'm sharing this example. For example, we will help street youth. So, instead, if you write street youth will be helped, this is more passive. Now, the active voice is very important. It gives a message of energy, of motivation, and of the belief that you have on your skills and competencies and the enthusiasm that you want to transfer, that you want your funder should see in your writing. So that's why you need to use the active voice always. Now, you also need to put some human element, or rather, if I say, focus on the human element of your project instead of looking after theories or theoretical ideas. What effect does your project brings on the humans, on their lives, on their skills, on their knowledge, on their attitudes, on their behavior? What difference does it make? So that human element, you need to highlight and underline that more and more instead of, juggling around different theoretical ideas. Also, try to answer each and every step that you will take in your project. So don't leave the readers to assume anything, and don't assume that these are the things that are understood or understandable, so you don't need to put them. No, don't do it. Even if it is so clear, even then you should back it up, and you should answer the question of why. Why do you want to take this step? Why this particular training? Why do you think it is important? So when you do your SWOT analysis, you also need to know that do that SWOT very honestly. Don't overestimate something, don't underestimate something. Be honest to the point as much as you can. Human errors are possible, that's fine. But the most nearer possible SWOT analysis. Do not overstate your skills. Whatever you write down, it becomes a legal obligation. So if you commit something which is not in your potential and which is beyond your potential, you don't have certain type of skills, that will become problematic for you. Use an enthusiastic and positive tone, as I said earlier. But your credibility should be there. Be realistic. Write a complete first draft before attempting an edit. This is very important. So when you start writing your proposal, I would suggest to go through all the elements, put all the elements first, and when you complete it, then you can go through and read it out, where you can see that sentences may be rephrased, there may be some corrections that are needed. All these things that should be done later on to save your time. And the last slide, and these couple of tips that I want to give you, you need to be sure, when I say about to be honest, to be candid, to be credible, so it's more or less the same point, but again I want to re-emphasize on it because this is a very key point which needs to be addressed. So the project objectives, that should be realistic. Whatever you are making, it should be realistic. The time that you are suggesting, the budget that you are proposing for, all those things should be realistic. And when that project approved, as I said earlier, it becomes a legal agreement with the funder, and you cannot then back out from it. Now, usually what the organization does, that they keep this flexibility of around 20%. If you are suggesting a budget of 5 million, so you can go up and down. There is a flexibility of 20%. So that means you can go for 6 millions. You can always ask the funder if you are facing some difficulty and shortage of budget. So you can always ask up to 20%, but obviously that will be done with the mutual agreement and with the discussion of your funder. And same is the case if the proposed budget goes down. Now the contact person, that is a key, the last point, but it's not the least. So identify a contact person, someone who is readily available to answer your queries. If you have any questions while writing down your proposal, so that person should be ready to answer your queries so that you can timely complete your proposal and timely submit it, revise it, and then submit it. So the contact person, it should always be there, and the format that I showed you earlier, the tool that you can use. So if you maintain that kind of database and a timetable, it will be very easy for you to keep a track of the contact person. Okay? So this is the end of our session number 1. And when we come back to the next video, we'll be starting session number 2, which is the key elements in writing a proposal. Alright? So see you in a minute. Thank you.